and welcome to Build. I'm your host, Brittany Jones-Cooper, and today I'm sitting down with a true multi-hyphenate, Amanda Seales. The comedian, writer, actress, and host is known for her roles on Insecure and for her Black culture game show, Smart, Black, and Funny. But now she's sharing her story in a new book called Small Doses, Potent Truths for Everyday Use. It's funny, informative, and in true Amanda Seales form, refreshingly honest. Please help me welcome Amanda Seales.
Hey, it's Smart, Funny, and Black.
Oh, did I do it? I did it backwards?
They gave it to you backwards in the prompt.
I wrote it backwards. I just wanted to get all the keywords in there.
You got them, though.
Got all the keywords.
All the points. Yes.
You did this.
Y'all don't understand. It is very trippy. Like, I'm really tripping, which was being what trippy is. Yeah. Like, because then there's this. Because I designed the cover, and now it's there. And I wrote a book, and now it's there. And I don't know why that's so. I think it's so weird for me because when you do something like video or, you know, even my special, it's like you're on camera, you do it, it's performance, it's done, and then you keep it moving. But this feels like permanent.
This is going on like bookshelves for like however long.
It's like a thing. And I think about what books mean to me. And I just have so many books that I've lived with and that continue to grow with me. And I hope that this is that book for other people.
I think it will be, because I think every time you pick it up, you're gonna see something different, because you do cover just sort of everything from love and relationships to race to like self-care to self-love. I mean, I think wherever you're at in your life, you're gonna find something in this book to kind of connect to, or maybe hear that you haven't heard and that you need to hear.
Yay!
Because we know Amanda Seales likes to tell the truth.
I do like to tell the truth, and that is why some people don't like me.
Yeah. Well, as I read in the book, who cares if they don't like you, right?
You know, I mean, but I think that at the end of the day, it's like I sleep better knowing that I've told the truth. So I like me. And I think that there's such a lack of truth telling. Like, we're in an era of like things like alternative facts and fake news. So it's like we need people who are willing to put the truth out on the line, even if it means, you know, not getting into parties. It's fine.
Yeah, that was some bullshit.
It was.
It was some bullshit.
But
speaking of, I listened to your podcast where you broke down all that happened, and this Small Doses is kind of inspired by your podcast, right?
Yes.
That's where this all started. So what made you want to make that jump from podcast to book?
The people. The listeners. So I really started doing my Small Doses podcast because I was kind of just pontificating on Instagram every so often, and folks were like, we'd love to hear your thoughts in a more organized fashion and in somewhere that we can come back to that doesn't just disappear on Insta Story. And then I started doing the podcast, and my podcast is really, it's kind of like your homegirl who's funny and got some common sense, like giving you advice and also giving you insight on things while she explores her own insight. So then I had people who were listening to the podcast say to me like, yeah, you know, I really want to see this in a book form so that I can like resource it. So it can be a reference, you know, that I can go back to over and over again. And I thought it was gonna be so easy to just translate, you know, okay, you do the podcast, you can do the book. No, ma'am. If you decide to write a book, just understand it's probably gonna kick your ass. Yeah. It's probably gonna kick your ass.
How long was this process for you, the writing process?
Well, I told myself I'm gonna write it in 2 months. I don't know who I think I am. I don't know who I think I am. I don't know who I think I am. I really, because you know what? I was really good at writing papers in school. Right. And it was always just like, oh, y'all are doing an all-nighter. Like, I know the outline. I'm gonna just write the paper. It's fine. So I thought once I write the outline for the book, I'm gonna just it out. And it did not happen that way. Yeah, it was less of a like detox cleanse and more of like a constipation. But it got out there, and it took a year.
Yeah, I was gonna say a year is what I hear is kind of typical by the time.
But you know, you try and tell yourself like, right, I'm not gonna need a year.
I'm an overachiever.
Yeah,
I got it.
Yes, which is also talked about in my chapter, People Are Weird, in the book Small Doses.
Which I related to because I'm also an overachiever.
We're a special breed.
We
and
are.
By special, I mean annoying.
But we get shit done.
We do.
Right? All day. And people love for us to get shit done. So
they do. They just don't like the process through which that might take place. Yeah.
On that note, I learned so much about you from this book. I mean,
really?
I've been a fan of yours. I've seen your stand-up. I've seen you on different shows. I've seen you hosting, heard your podcast. But there is a special level of vulnerability in the book that you really kind of open up. So was that scary for you to just really tell some backstories about kind of how you came to be the woman you are now?
Honestly, at this point, I think what's scary is the lack of willingness to do that. Like, I just think, and I don't understand, and I do understand why, because we're in such an attack mode as a society. It feels like even just the social media space just feels so much of like a gotcha type of vibe, and it can feel like, well, I'm not gonna put nothing out there because I'm not gonna give nobody a reason to get at me. But I do think that there's a reality in just daily life of people like needing to be able to find vulnerability. Like we've seen Brene Brown talk about it, you know, and it's not new. It's just that what's new is our necessity to really take hold of our willingness to like be honest with ourselves, which empowers other people to be honest. And I'm just a big believer in like the truth shall set you free. You know, like I mean, there's privacy, but then there's also secrecy, and secrecy just feels like a burden.
Yeah. I think especially too when you've taken the path you have where you are so open and honest about things, you have to kind of be open and honest about your journey.
Yeah, and I feel like people have shared with me so often that it really has inspired them and that it's empowered them. And I think that's the best metric. It's like we were out here and people were like taking pictures of me and stuff, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because like fame is bizarre to me, but I'm more interested in like when I get to hear that my work or something that I'm, you know, being emotive about or pontificating on is making somebody else feel stronger or feel safer or feel, you know, freer. And of course, like just making people laugh. Like that to me is the currency that I work in.
And you do that throughout the book. You make us laugh, but you also make us think, and you make your readers feel empowered, especially women. And you spend a lot of time talking just about things that affect women, all the bullshit from hair and makeup to style and all the pressures. Why was that something that you really wanted to just tell people, like, enough is enough? Like, you don't have to subscribe to some sort of ideal. Like, you just got to be you. Why is that a message that you're so passionate about?
I think I'm so passionate about it because it's something that, like, you kind of may get if you go to certain specific spaces. Like if you go to like a women's empowerment seminar, or you go to a young girls camp, you know? But in the regular like daily space, I don't feel like it is really spoken about and stood on enough. And I think that me being like a public, you know, figure and having a book, like you get to permeate more minds in that way. Also, we're just still disrespected, like in such an egregious fashion that anytime I'm given the opportunity to speak on behalf of women or speak specifically for the advancement of Black women's voices, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it unabashedly. And I aspire to inspire others to do so. And not just Black women. Everybody should be speaking about the fact that women are underserved, underrepresented, underappreciated. But we the shit though.
Right. I also love the empowerment around having a hoe phase and sexuality, especially in our society is so prude. But I also love like the naming of your vagina. You offer some like alternative names, and I thought that was really important. Specifically, I want to know where you came up with the La plus your middle name. Did you make that up?
Yes.
So like, what's one option for your vagina's name, given that?
La Ingrid.
La Ingrid.
Yes, with an accent.
La Danielle.
La Danielle.
And she sounds so fancy.
She sounds fancy. She sounds like she doesn't need soap. You know, she's living her best life. She's self-cleaning. I think, you know, like, I just try to like infuse humor in the spaces that we've been like shackled to pointless shame, you know? And like as a woman, like, okay, so I grew up in a West Indian household, like my mother's from the Caribbean, and our household was not about talking about none of that. So I had to figure out a lot of things just like in my own stumbleina kind of way. And if I can impart any wisdom or any type of insight that prevents others from having to go through like the hard lessons, like we all need lessons. But it's like, dang, it got to be like that though. You know, like I would have appreciated some lessons not having to go on as long. Right?
Especially when it comes to dating. You share some real, just damn. I'm sorry that you have encountered so many men who just don't have it figured out and just do weird, shady shit.
I'm so not a unique case.
No, you're not. Me neither. I'm just saying, like, I appreciate you sharing those
sorry.
stories.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for myself too, but reading it did make me feel less alone. And especially when it came to like just the digital age and swiping. Have you actually swiped? Is that something you've
I was on Tinder.
In? Mm-hmm. You were? Mm-hmm. God bless you.
I went on Tinder and, you know, because I'm a big believer in like, give it a shot. You know, just give it a shot. And it was just fascinating, like the type of people you meet. And I just realized it just wasn't my thing. But I think one of the things that frustrates me is like when you talk about relationships, if people think you're not in a relationship, you know, they're like, you can't talk about relationships. And it's like the concept of people thinking like if you don't have kids, you can't speak to like what it means to be a child. And it's like, well, I was a child. and I'm around children, and I have been in relationships. And I think a lot of us, especially like I'm 38, I'm at a point where being in a relationship right now is very choice driven. You know, I think when I was younger, it was more like you're just falling into things, or, you know, it's more about curiosity. And so like the decision to be in or not be in a relationship is not about lack of understanding. If anything, it's about having more understanding of what works and doesn't work for you. And I just wish people would have more of a respect for that. Like we're still attached to this idea that like having a man defines you as a woman. You know, like you'll have people be like, you ain't even married. And it's like, I was talking about frozen yogurt. Like, what is this? Why is this relevant?
Why are we? It's that want versus need conversation. You know what I mean? It's like you can want something, but you don't need it, and it's like people have a hard time understanding that too.
Well, I talked about that on. Do I talk about that in the book? I did talk about that on the Breakfast Club, and just the difference between like, you know, I want to be wanted, not needed, and I think some people feel some type of way about that, and that's because there's a codependency there. But necessity to me means that like anyone can fill that role that meets the needs, right? And want is like, no, that's a choice. I am choosing this because this is something I desire.
And I'm selective, so you're welcome.
Exactly.
Right? I do love the attention you pay to Black women throughout the book in your words, but also in your art. There's a lot of drawings and doodles. I didn't know you were an artist, so that was something I discovered. And a lot of it is just like centered around Black women and their hair and their faces, and just like, tell me why that was important to add in, because some of it I was like, I could frame this.
Yay!
Yeah, it's really dope.
This was my first book, and I wanted it to be as authentically me as possible in the text, but also if anyone knows me or even has any idea about like my work, it's always colorful and it's always fully thought out. Like there's so much attention to detail, and the dopeness is in the details, like I always say. So with this book, I really, when we started like putting everything together, it just seemed like, you know what, there's an opportunity here to take us even deeper into the mind of Amanda, and that would mean to include these doodles and these drawings. And the drawings and doodles that you see in the book span from like 10th grade to college, to like doodles in journals. So there's like a great expanse. Like whenever I'm in a hotel room, I try to always do a drawing on like whatever their hotel like stationery is. But I just think that it's so imperative to me that people understand that I'm like really rooted in art across a number of mediums. So throughout the book, like there's essays, there's stories, there's doodles, there's poems, you know, there's lists, there's just different ways of using words and using images to bring about just feelings.
It's really expression, and you talk about being a multi-hyphenate and how sometimes people can take that the wrong way because they want you to like pick a lane and choose something. And I was actually thought that was really important because I've been told that. And it's like, no, if you have diverse interests, if you can express yourself in different ways, why does it matter what your label is?
I mean, I think it comes from two schools of thought, right? Like on one side, which is maybe the more negative side, it comes from people who feel like, you know, they only have one thing, so like why should anybody else, you know, or maybe they're afraid of pursuing other things, so they kind of just naturally deflect onto you. But I think on the positive, on the more well-intentioned side, it's this idea of like, don't stretch yourself too thin, you know, like don't play yourself. And at the end of the day, though, I think the best bet when it comes to being a multi-hyphenate is just making sure that whatever you're pursuing is with real earnest and not just something just gratuitous about because like there's an idea that says like if I just try this, I'm an expert. And it's like, no, you got to like commit to it and really like approach it with mastery. And when it's all said and done, the whole idea of being a multi-hyphenate is about being able to juggle. If you're dropping the ball, you're not juggling. So people think like, no, I'm doing all these things. And it's like, yeah, but if you're not handling them, narrow it down. Right. Come back to it. And you shouldn't have no shame in that.
How do you sort of balance that? Because you do a lot of different things. How do you make sure you're not dropping balls? Not in a sexual way. I know as soon as I said
That's what she said.
I heard it as soon as I said it.
You know, this has been a real transition year for figuring that out because my time is just not what it used to be. And I had really like mastered time management. And now I'm just like, ugh, you know, and like things that I used to feel like I could get done so quickly, like even with the book, like I just thought I would just knock it out. But like my sensibilities have changed, my taste has changed. So my acuity to how I want to like handle things has changed. So even like, writing this book and now I'm writing a script, like I have to add 2 hours to my day. So I have to get up at 5 a.m. Okay, let's be real, 5:30. And like I'm awake at 5, but I'm not like doing things till 5:30. But I have to like get up before the world gets up to get going. And I had to like add 2 hours to my day in order to do that because I really have been using up my day. And here, let me just say this though. When I say I'm using up my day, like I don't work all day. Part of my day is doing nothing. And I think that that's, especially for a creative, like incredibly important. It's integral to the process to like let your brain kind of simmer and not necessarily always have to like push through. So much happens when you just kind of let it marinate and then you get these new ideas. It's just the germination of like letting roots go where they need to go.
Yeah. You have so much going on, and I think a lot of people know you for just how outspoken you are about race and just all the things going on in our culture right now. And specifically in the book, there's one passage I want to read that I thought was just like really kind of sung.
They read in passages, y'all. They read in passages.
Though we may live in a country that does not, or sorry, let me start again. Though we may live in a country that does its best to impede that social evolution by always taking measures to divert truth and learning from permeating too deep into the middle, lower income consciousness, I will do my part to continuously challenge and defy that with my voice and my art.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest weapon against the people has been the avid and dedicated efforts of limiting our education and our access to it. You know, in other places, education is free. Like in other places, going to a paid university is actually a sign of you not being as on point. It's only really here where it's like the higher the cost, the more that it means that you have intellect or access. That's by design. That's why it is so important that we support HBCUs. That's why it is so important that we really understand the necessity to have like diverse curriculums that are really teaching students about the truth, about history and the present, and not just about like what we think they should know to make them continue the status quo. That rhymed. And I stand on education. Like Smart, Funny, and Black may be a comedy variety game show, but it is rooted in the understanding that the more Black people know about our community and about our culture, and the more folks know about Black people's community and culture, the more that we will respect each other, the better our society can be, and the more we can continue to excel. And it's just knowledge. There's no reason, the reason why the statement knowledge is power is, it's not rhetorical. It's what you know, it's who you know, it's how you found out, all those things.
With Smart, Funny, and Black, I thought it was really interesting the journey that you were on with that project, because at first you were trying to get it made into a show, and I thought it was just really interesting all the hoops they were trying to make you jump through.
Oh, because I talk about it in the book.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? Because they were so concerned about it being too Black, and would people understand it, and you trying to express to them that that's exactly why it would be successful, but just kind of the walls you were running up.
It's always the fear of, well, I don't see myself, so how could it be good? That's constantly like what happens within the content created within like a mainstream America that's often ruled by the white gaze, right? Versus the happen to be white gaze. If you watch my special, I Be Knowing, you'll understand the difference.
Also, you make a very clear distinction in your book.
Yes, so there's white people and people who happen to be white. And if you want to know more about that, and if you fall into those categories, which one you fall in, check it out. I write about it in my book, Small Doses, available for pre-order now at smalldosesbook.com. But I just think that the reality about all of this is that we're not truly being honest with ourselves when we are asking like, well, we want to make a show that's not really about Black people. It's like, no, you just want to make a show that you're going to understand. And because you don't understand this, because it doesn't speak to you, you feel like it doesn't have value. And that's just a reflection of your own like low-key racism. But you know.
And then look, you just did it anyway in your own way, and I feel like you've gotten even more attention for it.
And people keep asking me, like, when are you gonna make Small? Because Smart Funny and Black is a live show. We tour it. You know, go to our Instagram, Smart Funny and Black. Go to our page, our website, Smart Funny and Black. And people ask, like, why haven't you made it on TV yet? And I'm like, because the revolution will not be live. The revolution will not be televised. It will be live.
With that, let's go to some live questions. Who do we have first? Right here.
Oh my God, there's questions. Ah! Okay.
Hi, so I am currently a college student, and I know that you got your master's at Columbia.
I see you have an NYU sweater.
I
Aren't we, like,
do have an
rebels?
NYU sweater.
Oh my God.
So I was wondering, because I'm kind of in a place where I'm a little stuck with like not only figuring out what I want to do, but also navigating spaces as a woman of color at a PWI.
Ugh.
So I was wondering if you had any advice about
Either of those?
either of those, especially like with taking care of yourself and maintaining your peace throughout that, because that's really important.
So you're really lucky because you're in New York City. So like there's hella black shit going on that has nothing to do with NYU. So you got to seek that out, you know, and create a balance for yourself. I was hosting on MTV at the same time as I was getting my master's at Columbia. So I had this like very interesting balance. Like I would be in class, like talking about like, you know, Paul Laurence Dunbar and Langston Hughes, and then I would be at MTV interviewing Outkast. And so like I got to have this very unorthodox balance of being at a PWI while I'm at like the most blackest space, like Sucker Free Sunday. Like that's hella Negro. And so you have to create those balances for yourself, you know? I was fortunate that it was kind of like built into the way my life went, but you have to create that for yourself. Now, as far as the being blocked, I think we really pressure like young people, and you are a young person. Like you may feel like you know it all, but you're a young person. And we pressure our like 18 to 22-year-olds to know exactly what they're gonna do. And I think that's sometimes what makes us stuck. Like, damn, I gotta commit to something like that I'm gonna be doing for like an extensive amount of time. Whereas to be perfectly honest, like commit to doing something you like. Literally. And if you like it, it's probably gonna either blossom into something that's maybe more permanent, or it's going to lead you down a road to something that is more permanent that may not be that thing. And we don't spend enough time like encouraging people to find confidence in themselves and to seek insight within themselves. We really just push people to find money and stability from others. Get stability in yourself, figure out what you're really like interested in, and then seek that out. And you have to do that by like asking yourself, what do I like? Like what am I really like what gets my goat? What gets my juices juicing? And that may take some time. It may take some time. But there's a really dope video on YouTube that Ira Glass from NPR talks about taste. And it's related to artists specifically, but it still applies to everybody, where our taste changes. But we have to give ourselves like the freedom and the patience to know that. And I promise you, whatever you're doing right now, it's gonna change at 30.
And you're speaking your truth, because in the book she does talk about how you really made a gigantic shift in your 30s.
I changed my name.
You changed your name. You changed your whole kind of career path. You really leaned into comedy, and that's where you sort of started, I guess, rising in like our view. But you had been working throughout your 20s just in kind of a different space. So what she's saying is real. Like you just have to be ready for your second act or your third act or whatever it is.
But it's scary. Like, I don't want you to think that I'm like, yeah, I did it like with no problem. Like, no, like, I almost got kicked out of college. I got kicked out of the conservatory at SUNY Purchase after my freshman year over some bullshit. But nonetheless, it did happen. And I was about to give up, and someone said to me, like, actually, you can't quit school. Like, you're too smart. So we're going to figure out a way for you to stay. And they found out that I could create my own major. So I'll even add to this that there may be people around you, and there may be signs that are pointing you in your direction that you may not notice. So it may be worth just like considering, maybe I need to open my eyes a little more. You're welcome. Was that helpful? Okay.
Who's got the next one?
It's me.
Right there.
Oh, hello.
Hi. So I'm also a college student at NYU, and so as like a Black Caribbean creative who's
Large up all Carib masses.
yeah, so I'm like starting to explore the professional world, and it's really difficult to enter into spaces where I'm not necessarily represented and where my voice, whenever I happen to raise it, is silenced. So I was wondering what your advice is on that in terms of like career path and how to kind of form like a space for yourself to enter into without being put down, if that makes sense. So
I think that there's an ideal answer and there's a real answer. Which one you want?
The real, for sure.
Okay. The real answer is we live in a nation that didn't want us to read. So we're still battling that. Like, we live in a nation that still is like, Black women, like, what is that? You know? So there's still just a very real uphill battle in the realities of the spaces that we are entering. And so there's a consciousness that you have to have about like knowing that going into those spaces, like, people are gonna be on some other shit. It's tiring, it's taxing, it's exhausting. I think that there is a consciousness that the fact that you're aware of it, that you can apply to maybe choosing spaces that are built for the purpose of creating spaces for different voices, right? We have seen, you know, and on the positive side, like, we have seen that there are oftentimes like legitimate companies and organizations that are being made and created in order to create space, right? So it's like also the option of seeking those out and seeking out how you can get in the midst of that, or starting your own. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, I may have to be in this right now because I need to get a check because I don't want to eat, you know, tuna out of a can forever. But there's also like, you do that, and the way you feed your soul is like you build a space for yourself. And I will always suggest to everybody, like, if you can do it, try to build a space for yourself. You know, like, ain't nobody gonna save you. They may point you away, you know, but like, for instance, like the professor who told me, like, you know, you can create your own major. She didn't create the own major for me. She just told me, like, this is an option, you know, but it was up to me to ultimately figure that out. And I just, all my art at the end of the day is really just trying to remind folks that you have everything within you. They'll trick you and show you don't, but you really do. And a lot of us who feel the most broken are because we had so much and people took it from us. And they saw it, and it was like a gotcha, bitch, and now we got to get it back.
Would you talk about being Black in the workplace? And she does say, you know, you got to look back into our ancestry and all the strong Black women who had it much worse and survived it. And we're just doing the same thing now, and we just got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. And they would find like all slick kind of ways. Like Robin D.G. Kelley was one of my professors in graduate school, and he wrote a book called Race Rebels. And in the book, he talks a lot about like this is different ways Black folks would be like, gotcha, bitch, without folks knowing. And like, you know, how like within the kitchens, you know, at plantations, like you'd have slaves who would do slick things, you know, to steal food and, you know, just to feel like you don't got me all the way, you know? And those are the, you know, like just the ways in which that we would find protest, the ways in which we would uniquely protest. And it ends up still being a real thing that we have to do. It really is. And so you just showing up is part of it, but you actually like going in is a whole other is a whole other level. This was not enough time. I feel like we could have I really skimmed the surface. I tried to pick out just the highlights, but there's so much to unpack and talk about in the book. I'm just so glad you like it. Yeah, I really did. I read it, I enjoyed it, I liked it. It makes you think and it makes you relate, you know? It's just nice to read a book by somebody who you can relate to. So, oh my God. I'm gonna cry. No, you know, I wrote a book. I didn't know if anyone would like it. I didn't write it with the intention of like, they gonna love this, you know? I just wrote it because it felt time to write it. So to hear you connect to it is awesome. Thank you. I think a lot of people are just fed up with bullshit. So it's nice to hear somebody else who's also fed up and talking about it. That is correct. And if that is you, then you should pick up Small Doses, Potent Truths for Everyday Use. It will be available on October 22nd, wherever books are sold, but you can pre-order now and put your hands together for Amanda Seales. You're great at this. Oh my God. Yes.